It's not always the big changes, it's the daily ones that protect our health. In this episode, I'll bring you 3 new studies: how plant protein may help you live longer, why short bursts of movement matter more than ever for our brain, and finally, a promising new approach in our pursuit of better sleep. I'll be breaking down the science worth your waking minutes. We experience 1,000 waking minutes on average every day. How are you spending yours? I'm Dr. Wendy Bazilian, and you're listening to 1,000 Waking Minutes. I can't wait to connect with you here with practical ways to eat well, move daily, and be healthy, to optimize every waking minute you live for a happier, healthier life. Thank you for sharing some of your waking minutes with me today. Let's get started.
I'm saying yes to better days, yes. I'm on my way, yes. It's gonna be okay, yeah.
Welcome back to 1,000 Waking Minutes. I'm Dr. Wendy Bazilian, and I'm so glad you're here. We're choosing to spend a few of our precious waking minutes each day together. So this is one of our Science You Can Use episodes. These are periodic stops along the way in the podcast when I have identified or bring you a few fresh studies that have recently caught my attention or that I think are worth a closer look. Not in a newsy headline kind of way, but sort of, how could this show up in my real life kind of way? And really, that's the point, right? For us, we're all trying to figure out how to live well across our waking minutes in our lives toward a well-lived and hopefully long and vital life. Maybe not perfectly, but with more purpose and hopefully a little more joy and more intention. So these episodes are sort of a way for us to get curious together. Maybe some headlines you've heard or seen. So in each of these episodes, Science You Can Use, I call them, we generally draw from the 3 pillars that guide the podcast: eat well, move daily, and be healthy. And through this lens, we look at real studies, current, relevant, and peer-reviewed science. If I don't bring you peer-reviewed science, I will tell you, maybe it's a poster session at a conference, something compelling that's underway, but I'll always share where the science comes from. And in this science, I try to select current studies that may help shape how we shop or cook, how we move through our days, how we sleep or how we think, how we care for ourselves in this very full, sometimes noisy, but also hopefully beautiful life. So maybe you're listening today while out walking your dog. Maybe you're doing dishes. Maybe you're in your car driving to or from work or between errands. However you found your way here today, I hope this episode gives you something real to carry with you into the rest of your day and your week. So today we'll look at 3 studies. The first and one study is about what's on your plate, so the eat well part, and in particular about protein. And it's through a global analysis of plant-based protein intake and its link to longer life. Good thing. Then we will talk about movement, and not just for us lifelong athletes, if you're one of those, but for all of us. And according to a compelling study, why daily movement of any duration is linked to good brain health and preserving it as we age, even if you start later in life. And finally, we're going to take a closer look at magnesium. In fact, a form of magnesium called L-Magnesium Threonate, a specific form of magnesium that research suggests may help support deeper and better sleep and better cognitive performance. I'm not here giving you the musts or any magical thinking, but I would like to explore what the evidence says and how it might gently nudge us forward toward decisions that will align with the kind of life that we want to live. So I've dug into the data, and I'll share it with you in a way and put it into action, because science would just stay stuck on the library shelves. I still picture library shelves for these, but in the digital library shelves, in the journal articles. But I really think the good research should move into our kitchens, into our calendars, and even into our wind down routines, as you'll see. First up is study 1, eating well. This is about plants, about protein, and about longevity. And in other words, the relationship between plant-based protein and living longer. So you've probably heard already that plant protein can be good for you. But this new study that came out of the University of Sydney looked at the idea on a massive global scale. So this was published in Nature Communications just in April of this year, 2025. And the researchers analyzed 57 years of data across 101 countries. Like I said, global data over a long time. And this wasn't the usual type of nutrition study where people might fill out food logs or surveys or be followed about what their diet was. This one used national level food supply data. In other words, what was actually available in each country over time. And they used this from balance sheets from the World Health Organization and the FAO, and they combined it with World Health Organization mortality records. So they weren't asking, did you eat tofu this week, or did you have beans or nuts? They were asking in general, how much plant-based protein or animal-based protein was in the national food supply over decades. And how does that relate to how long people live in those countries, or how long people tend to live, I should say. And what they found was indeed fascinating. The major finding was that countries with more plant-based protein in their food supply tended to have higher adult life expectancy. In other words, they lived longer. Additionally, the researchers found that more animal protein was linked and associated with higher adult mortality or death. However, it showed that the animal protein was linked with lower mortality in infants and children. So again, there was a link between plant-based protein supply and longer life in adults. There was a link between animal protein and higher mortality or death in adults, but the animal protein had a positive effect, the supply of that, for infants and children. This might sound surprising at first, but it actually tracks with what we know in science. Animal proteins are generally more bioavailable, meaning they're generally easier for the body to digest and absorb. They also take some different metabolic pathways to break down and whatnot, the whole protein animal food supply itself. But the fact that animal protein is more bioavailable and easy to break down is really important during the growth years. And so with infancy and childhood, early childhood development, when absorbing proteins can support development and think on a global scale, it has a positive effect. But in adulthood, the long-term pattern of high intake of animal protein, especially the red meats and the processed meats, has been linked to higher risk of things like heart disease, diabetes, some cancers, especially colorectal cancer. And if we think about plant proteins coming in a bigger package, they typically come with fiber, which animal proteins don't usually carry. So plant proteins, they have fiber. That's a biggie, which supports heart health. It helps manage blood sugar, helps promote satiety, and helps feed the gut microbiome. And we've learned that that plays a central role in everything from immunity to mental well-being. And fiber is one of the most underconsumed nutrients in the US and also abroad. In the US, a whopping 93% of us don't meet the recommendations for fiber. And of course, beyond that, plant protein sources also come bundled with other bonuses. They come with antioxidants, polyphenols, vitamins and minerals, other phytochemicals, and less saturated fat. As a result, plant proteins can also help reduce inflammation in addition to supporting gut health, as I mentioned with the fiber. And they tend to, by and large, encourage a more varied, whole foods-based eating pattern. So this was big picture. Let's keep that in mind. It's called an ecological study. It was not a randomized trial or a direct test of individual diets, but it does support what we see in the long-lived populations, things like the blue zones or regions of the world like Okinawa and Ikaria, Greece. When more plants are on the plate more often, people tend to live longer. So what do we do about that? We need a refresher on our plant proteins, perhaps. Let's think about putting it into practice for a moment and make it practical and delicious. You can add plant proteins to your very next meal. So think about maybe lentils in your salad. You can add chickpeas or hummus to your wraps. You can sprinkle seeds and nuts into your oats, your oatmeal, even on your toast, how you layer your toast with spreads. You can sprinkle some nuts and seeds there. You can have nuts in salads and snacks. You can make taco filling. I love to make a taco filling that's all vegetarian, made with walnuts and spices and herbs, sort of like a vegan chorizo. But you can make blends as well. And lentils can become taco filling. And there's lots of things you can do there. You can add it to your grain bowl. You can stir nut butter into smoothies or spread it onto toast. And yes, tofu is a plant-based source of protein that comes from soy. So you can enjoy that grilled or marinated, blended into dressings even, and into stir fries, which may be more familiar for some of you listening. And edamame, of course. I love edamame. My daughter loves edamame. Soybeans that are boiled and maybe salted or put some spices on them. They can be simple and satisfying. So the takeaway here with this study is not cut out animal protein. It's simply, let's put some balance to it. If you enjoy animal protein, let's allow plant proteins to have a little more space on your plate, in the plate real estate, I like to say. So by gradually shifting some of your meals, adding bean-based chilies, tofu stir fries, a handful of walnuts, this can all add up over time. And these small, simple changes can support a healthier, longer life. So everyday foods supporting long life, that's a win. And this was an interesting study and way to approach that through the food supply. And personally, it's important for us to think about, as we plan our meals, what's the impact of our choices? Whether we choose this or this and that as we walk through our day. Okay, so next up, study number 2 about moving. Move your body even if you start later. That's the bottom line for you. I'm going to put it right up front. Maybe you've been active all your life, or maybe not so much. There's a really interesting story. I'm going to save this for another episode, but I remember learning about Hulda Crooks, a woman who summited Mount Whitney. I'll have to check my facts on that, but she didn't start exercising at all until she was around 50, as I seem to recall. And she summited Mount Whitney many, many times, never really having done exercise in any kind of consistent or way that we consider exercise today at all. So here's the good news, and I'm going to share a study to support it. Even if you start moving later in life, it can still make a powerful difference for your brain. A 2025 study just out recently, published in the Journal of the American Medical Directors Association, it looked at about 90,000 individuals living in the UK. Most of them were in their 50s and 60s, and they wore wearable activity trackers. There's a number of different kinds out there, but they had activity trackers that they wore during the day. Researchers at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, those were the researchers who asked this question, what they wanted to know. How does physical activity at any amount relate to the risk of developing all-cause dementia? Something I would like to know too. They had the tools, the methods, and the data set to ask this question. And the results were striking. I think you're going to find this appealing. Even very small amounts of moderate to vigorous activity between just 1 and 34 minutes a week. I just said that. Let me repeat that. As little as 1 to 34 minutes per week were linked with a 41% lower risk of developing dementia over about 4 years that they looked at in this study. But it didn't stop there. It was true that the more movement, the greater the benefit. When the minutes increased from 35 to 69 minutes per week, the results were a 60% lower risk of all-cause dementia. 70 to 139 minutes per week. Now on the upper limit there, we're just approaching about 30 minutes, 5 days a week, at a 63% lower risk. And 140 minutes per week, just about 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, on average, if you put that math together, a 69% lower risk. So yes, just a few minutes, I should say, can add up to real protection over time. And here's my favorite part of this. This benefit held true regardless of frailty or age. So even older adults who were considered frail saw significant brain benefits from moving more. The more you moved, your brain benefited. So this means it's never too late. I love that. I love when science shows us things that should be common sense, but sometimes we don't want to believe it. This is one. So it doesn't have to be extreme. Just a bit of walking, stretching, dancing, gardening, what some people call exercise snacks. I sort of like that, exercise snacks, can help keep your brain sharper longer. So movement isn't just good for your heart and your muscles and your mood and all the things I love to talk about. Movement is medicine for the mind. Let's say that again. Movement is medicine for the mind. So this is powerful because so often we're fed the idea that only if we get like real exercise, or if it happens in a gym or a class or on a Peloton or wearing the latest gear, that's what counts. But this study reinforces that everyday movement counts. So what can we do? If you've been moving, keep going and pat yourself on the back, and your brain should be thanking you right now. Thank you, body, for doing that movement. If you're getting started later, it's not too late. And start with just what feels doable. I said 1 to 34 minutes in a week. Start with what's doable. Is it a 10-minute walk after dinner? Can you stretch in the morning? Can you park a bit further from the store? I know you've heard these tips before, but they really, really matter and they really add up. Will you actually take the flight of stairs right beside that escalator or instead of an elevator? And definitely, when you can, if you can, make it fun. Maybe you put on some music that you love to dance to when you're cooking or chopping or folding or anything, or just because, and dance around a little bit. So it's not about the steps. It's not even about how much and how hard. It's about doing it, period. Engaging your body, and it helps your brain. And when you engage your body, you're engaging your brain, frankly, at the same time. And it gives your brain what your body and your brain crave: blood flow, oxygen, mental challenges, balance, gives some rhythm. So I want to be sure to say this gently, but repeat it enough times, because I've heard from people that sometimes we move until we get the right moment. We feel right until the fog lifts so that we can do it, or after the fatigue passes, next week I'll start. But this study does remind us that the movement is the thing that may lift the fog. It may sharpen the focus. It may reduce the fatigue. And it can help us not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally. So even if you've been the person who's never been one for exercise, or it's been a while since you have, it's not too late. Start small, but start. In my life, I've seen how quickly the impacts of like a little neighborhood walk can spur you on again, even if you've had a long day and you feel like, oh, I just want to sit down for a while. I just want to relax. It can give you a second wind. It can give you certainly a clearer mind. And maybe you've felt this too. And this is the science that says, yes, this is real. Yes, it matters. So take that into your waking minutes and keep moving. I promise you'll feel good doing it. And the third study I want to share with you today is about sleep, the mind, and magnesium threonate. Now, what is that? Magnesium has sort of been having a moment lately. I've been seeing more and more articles about it, seemingly more studies coming out, but maybe it's more attention in the news. Athletes using it, people increasingly using it for sleep, more supplements on the market that are sort of promoting magnesium for a variety of reasons. And it really is for good reason overall. Magnesium is involved in more than 300 biochemical reactions in the body, including our muscle function, which is why you might hear about it in performance and with athletes or with muscle cramps and things like that. It plays an important role with energy metabolism, and it also plays a role with sleep. So I want to talk about sleep because that's what this study is about. And more specifically, the kind of sleep that actually helps you wake up and feel like you've slept, if you know what I mean. Because let's be honest, we've all had nights where maybe we've gotten the 7 to 8 hours with our head down and in the bed, but wake up groggy or foggy or just flat out tired. The nutrient in particular that's showing promise here is magnesium. And more specifically, a form that maybe you haven't heard of before, Magnesium L-Threonate. So magnesium isn't new in the wellness scene. You've seen it promoted for the things that I mentioned before, muscle relaxation, digestion for many people, to help with constipation for some, for stress support even. But not all forms of magnesium act in the same way in the body. So magnesium L-threonate is special because it is one of the only forms that can cross the blood-brain barrier. That means it might have more direct effects on brain function. This is a hypothesis, including memory, focus, and even sleep quality. So a 2024 randomized double-blind placebo control trial that was published in Sleep Med looked at 80 adults between the ages of 35 and 55 who had mild sleep complaints. So not full-blown insomnia, but maybe a little like you and me. But in other words, like difficulty falling asleep and staying asleep or waking up feeling unrefreshed. For 3 weeks, participants took a gram of magnesium L-threonate daily or a placebo. And it was the double-blind placebo-controlled trial, as I mentioned. The researchers didn't ask just how they felt, but they used wearable devices. Some of you have heard of the Ring. They didn't name the Ring in the study, but you might have heard of the Oura Ring, for example. And they measured sleep metrics there, as well as collecting feedback through detailed questionnaires on mood and memory, on alertness and energy. And here's what they found. The participants fell asleep faster. They had fewer nighttime awakenings. Their sleep efficiency, what it's called, and total sleep time improved. So they were better sleepers, in other words. And they experienced better next day cognitive function, like memory, focus, and attention. And isn't that what it's all about? Well, it's about a lot more than that, but that's our wake up alertness factor that we're like, oh, I got a great night of sleep last night. I feel focused. I feel alert. I can function at my best. So this really wasn't just about getting more minutes in bed. It was getting more restorative sleep. And you've heard me talk about restoration and rest before, but restorative minutes are those minutes that deeply matter across our 1,000 waking minutes. So I'm always food first, but if you want to support your magnesium levels naturally, you can always look first to the food. Leafy greens like spinach, chard, and kale. Nuts and seeds are good sources of magnesium. They vary by nut and seed, but almonds and cashews and pumpkin seeds are good examples. Legumes and beans like black beans and lentil and edamame, a plant-based protein as well. Those are sources of magnesium. And even dark chocolate in moderation has some magnesium. Just 2 tablespoons of pumpkin seeds, as one example, has 40% of your daily magnesium needs. A half cup of cooked spinach has 20%. So real foods have real impact. But if you are already covering your basis or just want some additional support and are not feeling rested, or if your brain is just like fueling on all cylinders and feeling empty, you might consider, it might be worth considering anyway, magnesium L-threonate. So while we're here talking about magnesium, I want to remind you that magnesium also plays that role in muscle function and gut motility. It helps ease tension and cramping, especially around hormonal shifts. So it may have a nice role to play around the menstrual cycle as one example of a hormonal shift. It's really a multitasking mineral, but the form really does matter. So the typical dose of magnesium L-threonate in supplements is around 2,000 milligrams per day. That provides what is about 144 milligrams of elemental magnesium. So it's not the same as other forms that you'll see on a label. And that's why I always want to reinforce that it's important to talk to your primary care doc or a registered dietitian. Could be a great call before starting any new supplement, especially if you're on medications or if you're managing some kind of other health condition. If you start adding supplements to your current routine and want to do that, also always search a source and a brand you can trust. That's good manufacturing practices. You want to see the GMP on the label. I've gone over this before in other episodes, and I'll do a whole one about this sometime. But you want to make sure there's independent quality tests. And of course, you want it to be something you can afford because you want to take it as directed to see the potential benefits and if they'll come that you're seeking. But this is definitely an area to watch and keep your eyes on and see and be aware that there are different forms. And especially if you're trying to sleep well, think clearly and feel more restored in your waking minutes. Think about magnesium and sort of follow that story. And I'll continue to share science as it comes out. So to recap for today, this is our science update episode, science you can use, evidence for your everyday. I like to call it that too. And we explored 3 new studies that give a fresh take on the choices we make and how they can support a longer, a sharper, a more vibrant, and restorative life. Eat well, more plant protein, plain and simple. There's lots of studies, but this one to support longevity and reduce chronic disease risk. Moving daily, even small doses, the smallest, 1 minute a week made a difference. Can you believe that? But more created more impact on reducing the risk of dementia. And be healthy, better sleep, and next day focus may be something that is supported by magnesium L-threonate. So again, not overhauling your life here. These are small, thoughtful steps that you can insert or add into your waking minutes if they fit what your goals are. 3 specific things to try this week. Add 1 meal this week that is plant protein focused. A lentil soup, a stir fry with tofu, a handful of nuts as your snack, Try one thing, one meal. Number 2, block off 10 minutes a day for movement. So I'm going a little above the 1 to 34 in the week, but block off 10 minutes, a walk around the block, stretch in your kitchen, take the stairs each day. And number 3, set a wind down cue at night. So do something for your sleep hygiene, they call it. Maybe turning off screens a little earlier, dimming the lights, putting on calm music. Help your brain recognize it's time to rest. And consider the magnesium L-Threonate if that's something further that you want to layer in or consider in your life. So that's that. Thank you for sharing a few of your 1,000 waking minutes with me today. I'm Dr. Wendy Bazilian, and this is the podcast where we blend science with real-life strategy and hopefully provide a little inspiration to help you eat well, move daily, and be healthy. And I hope you feel that we've done just that today. If you're enjoying the show, I'd be really grateful if you'd subscribe and share it with someone who might appreciate what we are talking about today. And do leave a kind review if you're inclined, wherever you listen. You can find me at wendybazilian.com, and you can write me at 1kwm@wendybazilian.com. On Instagram, I'm at 1,000 waking minutes. So here's to the rest of your waking minutes today and a restful, restorative sleep tonight, too. And until next time, be well. Thank you for tuning in to 1,000 Waking Minutes. A huge thank you to our amazing collaborators, including our production and marketing teams, and Gabriela Escalante in particular. To the ultra-talented Beza for my theme music, my lifelong friend and artist, Pearl Price Photography and Design, to Daniel Ballantyne, Jen Nguyen, Joanna Powell, and of course my family, and everyone working tirelessly behind the scenes. And to you, our valued listeners, I so appreciate your support. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving a comment, writing a review, and giving 1,000 Waking Minutes, that's us, a 5-star rating. And please hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Please follow and stay connected at wendybazilian.com. And don't forget to share with your friends. Your support helps us grow and bring you more great content. Until next time, find some simple opportunities to optimize those 1,000 waking minutes each day.
I'm saying yes to better days, yes. I'm all